Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into an updated look at polls from every single state. This is a full breakdown. It's rapid fire. It's probably going to be my last video on going through every single state specifically. You can see this is Real Clear Politics. They've got it 219 to 215. The one dispute you could potentially say if you're a liberal is maybe Minnesota should be lean Democrat. Right now, they have it in the toss up column, but we'll be going from West Coast to East Coast, taking a look at seeing if there's any updated polls. With Real Clear Politics, sometimes, unfortunately, they don't include all the polls because they don't like the pollster, but there's just incomplete data, so it is annoying. But let's take a look at Washington. I guess there have been a few polls out of Washington. Harris plus 21 and a half. I think Harris is going to win the state very easily. I don't know if it's going to be by 21 and a half, but she's obviously going to win Washington State. Oregon, there was still just that one poll that has Harris up by 5. I think it's going to be obviously more than 5. There might have been another poll that they just didn't input into Real Clear Politics, but Oregon's going to be closer than Washington. There's no doubt about it. That's why you can see the color change there in terms of the lighter blue. California, I think California is going to be closer than it was in 2020 or 2016. That's going to be a common thing I say throughout this video, I'm sure. Biden won it by 29 points. Hillary also won it by around 29 points. You've got Harris up by 23 and a half. Wouldn't be surprised, especially with the way these polls go in California, if these ended up overshooting Harris's performance and she only ended up winning California by around 20 points rather than the 23 and a half there. But there at least are a few polls out of that state. We're going to go to Alaska here. No polls out of Alaska. Alaska is kind of a weird state. Liberals keep thinking they could not flip it, but get it closer because it was a 5-point swing from 2016 to 2020. I don't know. I'd imagine it would probably be around a 12-point Trump victory. Hawaii's probably going to the Democrats. I'd say by less than 29, though. There were some weird polls out of Hawaii when it was Biden versus Trump, but it's obviously going to go to the Democrats. There's no doubt about that. Moving to the first swing state, Nevada. Obviously, a ton of polls out of Nevada. You do have Trump up by a half point right now. You've got that Atlas Intel with Trump +1, Trafalgar tied, a CNN Trump +1, Bloomberg, Harris +2. A lot of these polls, Trump is winning. So certainly throughout the cycle, the narrative's kind of been ever since Harris entered the race that she was leading Nevada. But recently, Trump has taken the lead. And especially you look at the early voting, it's very good. You don't want to put too much stock into the early voting, but the numbers are definitely different than they were in 2020 and 2016. And Nevada is a state that Trump was competitive. If you look at 2020, he was only lost by around 2.5 points. You can see the final results versus the average was dead on. 2.4 point victory versus the final result there. And right now, Trump would take that because Trump's up by half point. So you'll take a half-point victory. And it probably will be one way or another, Republican or Democrat, decided by around half a point. It's going to be a very, very close state. You're looking at Nevada, possibly Michigan being the swing state that's the closest in terms of overall margin. Moving on to Idaho. It's going to be a very easy Trump win. I thought I saw a poll out of Idaho. I guess they didn't put it in here. Montana, there's been some decent amount of polls in Montana because of the Senate race. That's very important. But yeah, so we saw with Montana, what was it, a 16.5 point margin? Yeah, so you can see it shifted to the left 4 points from 2016 to 2020. I think it's going to shift back to around a 20-point win for Trump in 2024. And then he should win it by around 7 or 8 points at least. It's not going to be competitive in the Senate. North Dakota, I don't think there's any. Oh, there is a poll. North Dakota poll, Trump up 27, which is kind of surprising. I think Trump will win it by more than 27, probably at least 33 minimum. South Dakota, there's a single poll. Emerson releasing a +27. Yeah, it's probably going to be like +27 to +29 in South Dakota. I would guess. You've got Wyoming, 0 polls out of Wyoming. Trump's going to win it by probably over 45 points. Utah, Trump +24 in 2 different polls. Yeah, Trump won it by 21 and 19, so around 21, 22 points. Limited polling in Utah. Arizona, another big swing state. And so this is a swing state where we're starting to see some legitimate separation, which is very good for Trump, sitting +2.5. You've got the one CNN poll, which in my opinion is a big outlier because CNN released that poll that had Harris +1. Their previous Arizona poll had Trump +5, and then their updated one. So, and that's the one poll where Harris is winning. Every other poll, you can see Trump is up, and you've even got a Trump +8. If you don't want to buy that, you've got the Atlas Intel Trump +4. You've even got a Morris Trump +1, Insider Advantage Trump +3. Even Bloomberg, who's been very liberal. They've been so liberal this entire cycle. They've been skewing left. They've even got it as a tie. and then CBS News with the Trump +3. I think Arizona's gone for Harris. She's not going to win the state. It's probably going to be a 3.5 point to 4 point victory in Arizona for Trump at this point. The polls look amazing. The betting looks amazing out of Arizona. You do have New Mexico. So New Mexico has been in the news the past few days because Donald Trump is doing a rally on Halloween day at around noon, I think, in New Mexico, in Albuquerque. And listen, their internal numbers are obviously better than this. If you're losing a state by an average of 7.5 in terms of the polls, you're not going to visit it this close to the election. Maybe they've got a few internal polls that say they're down by 3 or 4. So it's maybe worthwhile. There's a number of strategical reasons you would go to New Mexico. Really, I would have to know more data on their internal numbers, but you could be thinking about, well, we've been to the Rust Belt so many times. There's no real reason to go there again when we think it's really not going to have that big of an impact. Might as well try and expand the map. In case we lose the entire Rust Belt, you could potentially still win. Because right now, if Trump wins the Sun Belt but loses the Rust Belt, he's only at 268. But if he wins another state like a New Mexico or Virginia or New Hampshire, he wins the election even without any of the Rust Belt. So you're trying to expand the map if you are Trump. You look at the history, Hillary +8, Biden +10.5. It'll be, I would imagine it'd be about a 5 or 6 point victory right now for Harris if I had to guess on New Mexico. Moving on to Colorado, there's one poll, Harris +11. Yeah, it's going to be, it would probably be around 15 or 16 for Harris. The state's just turned left. There's a lot of liberals moving to Colorado. Maybe it could be less just because the environment's better than it was in 2020, 13.5 in 2020. You saw the swing from 5 to 13, which was pretty dramatic, but we saw swings like that in 2020, believe it or not, going, to the left that far by like 8 or 9 points. But Colorado's going to go liberal. There's just no doubt about it. Even though that's just one liberal pollster saying it, it certainly is. You've got Nebraska. This is just statewide Nebraska. So this is only, it's not all of the electoral votes in the state. But obviously you can see Trump up. I think it's 3 electoral votes the statewide. Trump's going to win statewide very easily. If you look at no, it's 4 total, I guess. Yeah, so it's 4 total, and then there's the 1 district. So Harris has been leading this district, and that's what I was trying to tell people. Maybe these polls are skewed. I mean, it's New York Times, Siena, CNN with a Harris +11. These are all recent polls, or at least relatively recent. I mean that area in Omaha is just skewing more left right now. They're like, oh, because the suburbs are going more left, that's bad news for Trump. I just think it's a very small area. And maybe, Biden won it by 7. Ideally, you would think based on where we're at currently, it would at least be more competitive to where Trump might be able to win it, but we're just not seeing that with polls. Although there is very limited polling, I don't think that district will be won by Trump at this point when it comes to that. Next, we do have Kansas. So, yeah, there it is, that +5 poll. So that pollster is kind of weird. It's graded an F, but they were right on the money in 2020. And I think they were right on the money in 2022, or it was 2020 and 2016. And Kansas is a state they're getting more liberal. They are. You can see 21 down to 15, although part of that is also the environment. It is a better environment for Democrats in 2020. Is it going to get down to 5? I don't think so. That'd be pretty crazy, but I think it's going to go down. I think Kansas will be more left probably in 2024, just based off of the shifts that we've seen in that state. Moving on, if it'll load here, Oklahoma. That's a low budget. Come on, this +16 is crazy. Trump will win Oklahoma by at least 30 points minimum. Sooner poll, huh? I don't know. This thing's not loading. Moving on to Texas, you can see you do have Trump sitting +7. That's a good number. You would love. Yeah, this thing is just. This is a very good number for Donald Trump because we've been seeing what's happening in Texas. You go from a 9-point victory. 2012 was even more. Now it's down to 9. Then it's down to 5.5 or 5.8. Now it's potentially back up to 7. That's with a new New York Times Trump +10. That's a really good poll. That's why people are saying Trump could win the popular vote, because if he's making up significant ground in California, New York, and he's even making up ground since 2020 in Texas, which is a state you would think that would be closer based off of the shifts, we're just not seeing it off of these polls. So you win Texas by 7 points, maybe 8. That's beautiful if you are Trump. If he can win Texas by that amount, that's a very good sign. Louisiana, going to be an easy win for Trump, obviously. No polls out of there. Arkansas, there's 1 poll, Trump +15. It's going to be a lot more than 15. I would expect at least 25 minimum him to win Arkansas. Missouri, you do have Trump up by 10 in Missouri. Missouri, another state that could slightly be going to the left a little bit. I think it'll be more than 10. That Emerson released a poll. It'll probably be like 14 or 15 if I had to guess. It might lean slightly left, but it'll still be a Trump state for sure. You do have Iowa. Really no polling. Trump's going to win Iowa. You look at, 2016, it was 9.5. 2020, it was 8. I think it'll be around 8 or 9 minimum. I mean, I've seen a few polls out of Iowa. One of them was close. Another one was a total blowout. Minnesota, so they've got Minnesota right now as a swing state, 4.7 real clear average. That's with the Survey USA Harris +8, because you had two polls, Minnesota Post, Rasmussen, even that Star Tribune with a Harris +5. Those are closer numbers. Now, will Trump be able to win this state? I don't think he's going to Minnesota. Their internal numbers can't be amazing, but it's definitely going to be closer than it was in 2020, like a lot of these states. +7, I mean, Hillary only won it by 1.5. It'll probably be about a 3 or 4 point victory if I had to guess when it comes to Minnesota. Wisconsin, another huge swing state, basically a pure toss up. You've got, I mean, listen, that CNN poll completely swung it for Harris for sure, +6. That's a crazy outlier. Marquette, who's been more liberal this cycle with a Harris +1. That's not bad for Trump. Atlas Intel with a tie, Insider Advantage, USA Today, Emerson, all Trump +1. A lot of ties, very close. That CNN outlier swings it though for sure to Harris. I think Trump ends up winning this state. You look at the 2020 and 2016, they underestimated Trump significantly. This is probably about a 1.5 point win for Trump if I had to guess right now in terms of that. Moving on to Illinois, zero polls out of Illinois. I think it'll be closer than 2020. It'll probably be about a 12-point win for Harris if I had to guess when it comes to Illinois. Moving on to Kentucky, zero polls out of Kentucky, probably about a 30-point win there. Moving on to Indiana, Trump sitting +16.5. Yeah, it'll probably be about a 19 or a 20-point win in Indiana if I had to guess. Michigan, another huge swing state, obviously. Harris sitting +0.5. It's because of those three polls. So when you look at Michigan, that's a good poll. USA Today has it tied. Many of these polls have Trump up. It's just the polls that have Harris up have her up by 3, 4, and 5. The polls that have Trump up only have him up by 1 or 2, so within the margin. This is a state that Trump did recently take the lead. Harris took it back with a few polls. You've got Bloomberg, which is skewed left. You've got Quinnipiac, which has had some weird data. I think Quinnipiac's going to release another poll, if I had to guess, right before the election out of Michigan. It wouldn't surprise me at all if their next poll was like a tie or something, rather than a Harris +4, which would replace that Harris +4. You're looking at Michigan, a state that Trump's probably going to win by about 0.5 point, if I had to guess to a point. That would be my prediction on Michigan. Moving on to Ohio, obviously a state that Trump won by 8 points in 2020 and 2016. You know, you've got the Senate race there, very important. I think Trump ends up winning Ohio by around 9 to 10 points. I think I said around 9.5. I would say Trump winning Ohio when it comes to that. Moving on to Tennessee, Trump's going to win Tennessee. There's no polling out of Tennessee that we can see there. Moving on to Alabama, zero polling out of Alabama. Trump's easily going to win that state, obviously. You've got Georgia, another big swing state. Trump sitting +2.4. So this is what we're really seeing. We're seeing Georgia and Arizona heavily trending to Trump. And you've got Trump up at all these polls outside of the Marist. You do have the Atlas Intel +3. You've got the gold standard poll there, the Atlanta Journal, Trump sitting +4. This is probably a 3.5 to a 4-point victory in the state of Georgia for Trump, I would imagine, right now. This is heavily tilting to Trump when it comes to that swing state. South Carolina, only two polls out of South Carolina. Probably about a 13 or a 14-point win if I had to guess for South Carolina for Trump. North Carolina, major swing state. Trump sitting +1 right now. You got a Trafalgar +3. Liberals aren't going to like that. But a Trafalgar, they have gotten some of their polls right. You look at 2020, 2016. Atlas Intel, Harris +1. They've pulled North Carolina weird. Other than that, this is a state that Trump's probably going to carry by about 2 points if I had to guess. You look at, I wonder how accurate their polls were in 2020. Final results, yeah, so they underestimated Trump by a point in 2020. So that's what ended up happening there. So Trump sitting +1. You'll take that number. I think this is about a 2.5-point victory for Trump right now in North Carolina in looking at that. Virginia, this is a state where Trump is going. People are saying maybe it's a swing state. We'll see. You've got a Rasmussen +2. You've got a Washington Post +6. You've got that Christopher Newport +11. And liberals were saying, how accurate it was in 2020. Any pollster can be accurate for just one fluke poll in one state. Maybe they should do an updated poll. We'll see. But I mean, that being in the aggregate really changes it because it makes it +6 rather than like a +3. Virginia as a state, I think Trump can flip. It's going to be hard. But with Youngkin there, it's possible. I think it'll at least be within 3 points, at least. But it's potential. And if he does flip it, you don't need any of the Rust Belt at that point. You do also have Florida. Trump has built up a very nice lead in Florida. There was a slight thing that was happening in like September where they were like, well, you know, Harris has a chance in Florida. It's obviously not going to happen. I think it's probably around 11 or a 12-point victory in Florida. Right now, the average is 8.5. The Marist +4. They're just polling it wrong. I'm guessing they're oversampling Republicans by 3, which is not correct. Republicans control that state by like 7 or 8. You look at the voter registration, they're up by like 1.2 million. It's like an 8 point advantage over Democrats. And it's probably going to be about 11 or 12 point win when it comes to that state in terms of that. I think we're moving on to Pennsylvania now, the final major swing state. Trump sitting plus zero point 0.7. You've got a lot of ties here. You've got a CNN tie. You've got the new Quinnipiac poll that just came out today. That's very, very positive for Trump. That puts him up by zero point 0.7. And we're going to, hopefully get rid of this New York Times Siena poll. Once that gets thrown off of the aggregate, maybe they'll release a new poll. I would highly doubt it would be another Harris plus 3. That's going to improve Trump probably to move above 1 point in terms of the aggregate, because right now he's sitting at 0.7. Very, very good polling for Trump. This is exactly where you want to be. I think Trump wins Pennsylvania by probably around 1.8 to 2 points when it comes to PA. You've got New York. A lot of people talking about New York possibly getting closer. These polls to me they're too rich. I certainly don't think Harris is going to win it by 17. Biden won it by 23. Harris won it by 21. I would imagine, and maybe I should temper my expectations for New York, because originally I was saying about 12 and a half. And that was from like the Biden Trump polls that had it under 10, because there were Biden Trump polls that had it like 7.5, 8. I'd say like 13, 14 point win for Harris. New York's going to get closer. There's no doubt about it. I just don't know how close it's going to get in terms of that state. Massachusetts, liberal cesspool. It's not going to happen. Massachusetts 20 point win. Rhode Island, same thing. Harris plus 20, going to be a pretty easy win there. You do have Connecticut, one poll, Harris plus 16. I mean, not bad. I mean, maybe Trump keeps that Connecticut within 12. I guess New Jersey's the one state worth talking about. Although you got that Rutgers poll, Harris plus 20. There's no way. That's a crazy outlier. I'm guessing it'll be around a 12, maybe even less, 11 point win in New Jersey for Harris. New Jersey's also going to get closer, just like New York. You've got Delaware, a Harris plus 20. It's going to be closer than 20. It's certainly going to be closer than 20, but I think it'll be about a 10 point win to 12 point win in Delaware. Maryland, the Senate with Hogan, that's what they were talking about. The Senate was never going to happen. Waste of money. Harris is going to win easily, obviously, in terms of that. And then DC, I mean, I think Jill Stein has a chance to win DC for sure when it comes to that. But you've also got Maine. So Maine at large, the 2 electoral votes, you could argue maybe it's a swing state. I mean, there's just no polling. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, Harris is going to win based off of these 3 polls. This is crap polling. It's just not, Harris is the favorite, I guess. Biden won it by 8.5. Hillary only won it by 3. I think people might be surprised by Maine. There's just no polling. I mean, who knows? Maybe Trump does win Maine. It just depends. But there is that. New Hampshire is the one other state that we're talking about. Maybe Trump can change the electoral math if he's able to flip it. You did have a poll that isn't inputted in here that does have Trump leading New Hampshire by 0.4. So there is that. And you've also got this Emerson plus 3. So New Hampshire, I also think there's a Rasmussen Harris plus 1 that hasn't been put in here yet. So there's some close polls in New Hampshire. There are. Now, if I had to predict right now, it would probably be Harris eking out about a 2.5 point victory in New Hampshire if I had to predict right now. But listen, Trump has a chance in New Hampshire for sure. There's no doubt about it. You've also got that one district in Maine that you'd like to see Trump win, obviously. Yeah, it might get a little bit closer. It'll be about a 5 or a 6 point Trump victory, but who knows when it comes to that. But either way, I think I did go through all of them. All of the swing states are looking really good for Trump. You could argue maybe Michigan starting to become 50-50. Wisconsin, that what was that CNN poll that came out, that crazy outlier. The CNN plus 6 is what it was that swung that. But again, it's like, we're talking about 0.1, 0.2. It's not a big deal. And the Sun Belt is just looking so amazing for Trump. Things are definitely looking very, very good. But obviously, in terms of the polls, it is a very, very close election. The other thing I guess you could look at is just in general, the Trump versus Harris right now, popular vote, Trump sitting plus 0.4. That was the TIPP updating with the Harris plus 1 that changed it, because it was Trump plus 0.5. I think I'd imagine that's what it was. So this will be interesting what happens with this popular vote, because what's going to happen is Fox News is going to release, I would imagine, a final poll, unless they've already released their final poll, because maybe they have, but from what I know, they're probably going to release another one, because I didn't hear them say that was their final poll. I wonder if the Wall Street Journal releases a final poll, Forbes, CNBC. Those are all good polls for Trump. So the problem is those are going to get knocked off at the aggregate. But some of these, I think CNBC, that was their final poll. The thing is, if some of these get knocked off, it's going to bring Trump down, depending on what happens. Like if Wall Street Journal comes out with a new poll and it's Harris plus 1, that's going to be a big change, because their last poll was Trump plus 3. That gets knocked off for a Harris plus 1. So you have some Trump polls that might get knocked off. It just depends. It'll be a big update for sure. You'd love to get the compost out, but the compost is such a bad poll. It's such a liberal bias. Every single one of their polls is far, far overestimating liberals. I can guarantee you, but they continue to be included, which is it is what it is. You include Republican pollsters, you can include them, whatever. But I don't think I have to remind you guys, Real Clear Politics is significantly, in terms of their polling aggregate, significantly underestimated Trump in both 2020 and 2016. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.